All right, everybody, welcome back. Talking Puck, Tom Callahan, Mike Haynes, and apparently gremlins. Lots of gremlins tonight wanted to drop in and invade the show. But hey, first of all, thank you, everybody, for your patience. It is a live streaming show, and sometimes software decides to rear its ugly head. But we're back. I have a camera now. Mike has a camera. Both of our microphones are working. So far, so good. I'll knock on glass here because that's what the tabletop is. But Mike, we were talking into the break about coaching changes, and Detroit we know is going to change their coach at some point. A lot of other teams have so far. Is there any other team you're looking at right now where you're kind of wondering as you see fortunes go up and down? Because Minnesota has picked it up, and we talked about them earlier this year. They're playing much better.
Yes.
But is there anybody else, and we'll get to the teams that are playing better here in a moment, but anybody else you're thinking of that, you wonder, okay, is that coach on solid footing right now?
I think, like I said, the first coaches at this time of year, other than the misconduct coaches that are going to be out of a job are the coaches that are coaching for teams that have had success, probably last year, or the past few years, and not living up to that success and expectations. Said, okay, Toronto, and along with San Jose, were two teams that last year were in the playoffs, and in San Jose they made it to the conference finals. Toronto has not done as well in the playoffs as that franchise had hoped they would, but those are that's a couple of examples of and then the New Jersey team. That one, I don't know where that falls because we've had out of those five coaches that I said that happened during the Detroit losing streak, a couple of them for the misconduct. Then you got the two that I said were the coaches that the teams were underperforming. I don't know where you put that Devils one. I know there was some expectations. You didn't have them. I know, Tom. You didn't think they were going to be good this year.
No.
But I think a number of people, a number of publications thought they would be better this year, that they were primed to really move up. So I think we're at that point now where we've seen the expectation teams losing their coaches. That now has been done. I think what you're going to see now is after the first of the year, teams that have no shot at all of making the playoffs and that they don't see a future with that coach, those are the guys that are going to go. So I think after the first of the year, we look at teams that are at the very bottom and feel like they need a change for the upcoming year. A team like Detroit, who may or may not wait till the end of the season. Those kind of teams that are at the bottom, I think those are the coaches that are on the hot seat next.
Taylor Hall has all but declared New Jersey in a rebuilding phase, all by himself. He's.
You wonder how much that had to do with him losing his job there, the coach losing his job in New Jersey.
Maybe.
Well, he couldn't get. He's supposedly your best player, right? Taylor Hall.
Yes.
You couldn't get him to buy in to what you're doing. He obviously wanted out. So, does that have anything to do with the coach getting let go? You couldn't get your best player, to get in there.
Yeah, and I think, and there have been a lot of disappointments for New Jersey this year, Mike. A lot of things that we look at, but I think to myself, if a guy like Hall is going to say, I'm pretty much out the door, they're scratching him right now. Now, he may not be traded before the holiday freeze, which is what the initial goal was.
Right.
Yeah, it's Thursday.
Right.
So, but now he's been scratched a couple of games. The Devils don't play again until Wednesday against Anaheim. But Colorado and Arizona were supposed to be two of the teams that were potential landing spots in on this, and those were their last two games. But still nothing. And you wonder about the price, too, being asked.
Right. I read a big article today out of Arizona that Arizona is the leading candidate, that there's one player, one of their prospects is the guy that New Jersey wants and Arizona doesn't want to give up. And that is the guy. This is an article out of Sportsnet up in Canada. Chris Johnson, who is on the air up there, wrote this article, and he said that Arizona's number one team after Hall, that the holdup right now, and that's where that's New Jersey played in Arizona on Saturday after being in Denver on Friday. As you said, Hall sat out both those games, which leads some credence to the possibility of Arizona being that team. And there's one guy, so it seems like it's a negotiating situation now. If there's some credence to that article that I read. Oh, you know what? I just wanted to add one thing, Tom.
Okay.
I just one name just popped into my mind. I should have thought of this for teams that expectations were there and not performing. I wonder about Nashville and Lafayette.
Ah, yes, that was one I wanted to get to as well, and
Yeah.
then I kind
Sorry,
of got
I just it just
sidetracked by
popped back
Taylor
in
Hall.
my head. Yeah, I know. No,
Yes,
it just popped in my mind when because I was going over teams that had expectations and are underperforming this year. That Tampa Bay and Nashville are the two teams to me that still have coaches that are good coaches, have had success, but the team is underperforming, and they may be in danger because of that.
yes. Yes, and watching that loss to the Sabres, the 4-3 loss to and the Sabres have been up and down this year. They're kind of on an upswing again right now. I don't think the Sabres are 100% where they would need to be to make a deep playoff run, but they're not a
Right.
bad team. But Nashville has all this talent, and it's interesting, the talk, and we had even talked a little bit about Duchesne when he went to that team. It's like, was that the piece that put him over the top? But they have a lot of guys on that team who are supposed to be the man or close to the man who haven't gotten things done. And Duchesne's one of them. Ryan Johansson's another one. They've got these guys. Now, Forsberg is a legit player. I love Philip Forsberg. I think he's awesome. Right. Roman Josi is a Norris Trophy candidate every year, in my opinion. They have an aging goaltender.
How about Kyle Turris? They gave up a lot. That was a big trade.
Yeah,
he's been a healthy scratch this year.
Yeah, he's better now, but on balance, you look at what you give up to bring that guy in because he was another guy who was supposed to be an answer for a problem they felt they had, and for the most part, recent play except it hasn't been. And it's going to take more than a 5-game stretch with your hair on fire to convince me you've answered the question. So.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, and we say this every week: how much of that is Laviolette's fault? How much is that is the players not performing? But you don't fire the players; you fire the coach. And so would a system change do them good? Would it give them a little shot in the arm?
And then you add in the fact that a videotape had surfaced about Lafayette, right, when he was coach of the Flyers.
Oh yeah,
he hit a player.
Yeah,
Line was it? Leno. Sorry, you're right, Billy Leno. And so, I don't know. So I think he's again using that formula that I said about teams that were expected to be better are underperforming, and if you make a change now, you feel like, okay, we're not quite to the halfway point of the season. If we make a change, maybe that gives the new coach time to get this thing turned around and perform. So if I'm those two guys, those are probably the two teams. If I'm the coach, I'm looking over my shoulder. And I don't want to hear from the GM right now. I don't want to see that phone. I don't want to see that phone call. If I'm looking at my cell, I maybe don't want to be picking up if it's the GM calling it. And stuff. And then I had one other point about that article from Taylor Hall that I read. Tom, it said in there that his agent, again, just going by this article that I read, the agent said that Hall right now is rental only, that they don't want to talk contract extension. So that changes things in terms of how you get dealt, right? If let's say you're Arizona, if Taylor Hall is not willing to sign an extension, that changes what you're going to give up for him, because now you don't know following this year, if you're gonna give up, if you got to give up a top draft choice, a prospect at least, and probably something else to get him. That's a lot, not knowing if he's going to come back. And Arizona right now is in first place in their division, but I don't think that I can't believe that they're going to win the Stanley Cup. So that's a team that should be building towards the future. Is Taylor Hall really a good fit for them if they're not assured that he's going to sign? It'd be one thing if they went, we'll give up these guys, but we need to sign him to a 6-7 year deal, make sure he's with us if we're giving all this up. That to me, because I don't see Taylor Hall being the one piece that Arizona needs to win the Stanley Cup this year. They're not going to win the Cup.
Or at least, Mike, and to your point, I read also, I was reading on Sportsnet, and no one knows if Taylor Hall and his agent have been allowed to talk to any of these teams or not. Now, they've come out and said they don't want to talk extension right now, but at the very least, it'd be nice if you were either Arizona or Colorado or whoever to say, well, are you at least interested in talking to us about coming here? Because that may, and here's the thing is, Taylor Hall, don't shoot yourself in the foot, buddy. If you want to move, you're going to at least have to talk to some of these teams. And if it's you and your agent who are like, well, we're not going to talk to anybody right now, that's detrimental to your cause of trying to leave New Jersey, and you have to understand that. That's part of the cost of doing business.
Yeah, and the other thing is, yes, he won the MVP a couple of years ago, but he is not having a season where you go, we'll give up. We're gonna just throw everything at. We got to have this guy,
Right?
He's a good player. I don't know if he's a guy that you're gonna give up especially if you're Arizona. You have had struggled so many years with that franchise. You finally brought in a GM that has changed things and is building towards the future and really starting. I mean, they made that was a nice deal they got. They got Kessel, and maybe they feel like they need a couple more of those kind of guys. But Hall has never won anything in his career. Kessel has. So why would you give up so much future to bring in Hall, who's not having that great a season, has never won anything, and you have no assurance that he's going to play for your team after the season at this point?
Although if I'm Arizona, part of those are the reasons why I am tempted is because you haven't done anything in several years. You kind of feel like you might have a good chance at a run right now. And don't forget, this is a franchise that needs a building, that needs popular opinion on its side, and they need to sell tickets. And the temptation to put him together with Phil Kessel is big. That's the first combination I would try, would be Hall and Kessel together, and you see whoever fills in on the other side, and off you go. So that's a reason. Colorado, it's an embarrassment of riches as far as I'm concerned. If they add him to the forward core, that's a pretty deep team right now. I mean, there's other places, and I can see why New Jersey would prefer to send him west. That makes sense. But, Florida has been kicking the tires on him as well, which you want to talk about a team that could benefit from a guy like that. I think the Panthers are. And keep in mind, Mike, here's the thing. Even though he's not signed for next year, it's a $6 million cap hit. You still have to be able to fit that this year. And some of those teams, no problem. I think Florida, I believe the cap situation, it would be fine. Same thing, Arizona, I don't think it's a problem. I'm not sure where Colorado would be on his cap hit if they'd have to move someone else. And that also changes the equation. Are you asking the Devils to take prospects and picks only, or are you asking them to maybe retain a little salary, or are you asking them to maybe take a cap hit out of your lineup so you can afford a Taylor Hall? I mean, there's some juggling to be done here. But at this point, I just don't see him moving before Thursday unless things suddenly work themselves out. It seems unlikely to me.
The other guy I've been reading about that would be interesting, if anybody feels he's got anything left, and he's got the rest of this year, obviously, and he's got another year left on his deal, is Kovalchuk in LA. He's not playing. And man, he's 36, but boy, he's a tempting guy. If you think maybe he's got a little bit left in the tank, if he can come in and help you a little bit on the power play, perhaps, and maybe be a second line guy with the right fit. I find him an intriguing player to think about too. And I don't know if he cost you that much. I think the Kings be happy to get rid of that situation.
Yeah, I think so as well. Red Barchetta asks, speaking of trade requests, what do you think about Zach Bogosian's alleged trade request and Kruger's response? First of all, I really like Ralph Kruger. He seems like a guy who actually really thinks about what he says before he says it. And I think he's very measured and very balanced. And, it's kind of funny. Here's my personal take on it. If a guy wants a trade and he doesn't want to be somewhere, he's as good as mentally off your roster as it is. So you should probably move on from that player. So if Bogosian is really just sour about the way things are going, he's not happy where he's at, I don't know. I feel like, Mike, at this point, and there's probably other players like this around the league, and obviously we're talking about one right now in Taylor Hall. But I mean, why would you even bother to try to keep a guy who is discontented on a team where, quite frankly, a little bit of discontent can really disrupt the flow of what could be a good season?
Yes, and I think, at least publicly, hockey may have the least amount of guys that request trades publicly. Things go on. We know that things go on behind the scenes. The player's unhappy. He's not getting playing time. He goes to his agent. The agent goes to the GM and says, "Hey, you know what? He's not happy. Can there's something you can do?" Things get. It's pretty rare, don't you think, Tom? That guys are out in public saying, "I want out of here. I want to be traded."
It definitely is. We
Mhm.
don't see it a lot, and now behind the scenes, who knows?
Oh yeah, I think it happens much more than we realize. But in terms of guys saying it publicly, doesn't happen that often. So when that tells me he either that's his. I don't know him that well. Either that's just his personality, or somehow slipped out and he didn't have any other choice, or because sometimes agents, they'll talk or something will happen and things will somehow get slipped to a reporter, and now it's out in the open. But if he is open and saying this, and not trying to hide it, boy, that really tells you got to move him. You got to do something and do it fairly quickly.
And what I liked about Kruger's response to the whole thing, Mike, was he
Mhm.
left no doubt of who's running the show here.
Oh yeah.
And it's nice to see a coach who's not afraid to put his foot down. But you know what? A lot of these guys, here's the thing, is if you have the vote of confidence behind you and you know you do,
That's what you have to have. Yeah.
much easier to make those statements and say things like that, I think.
Oh
And
yeah.
but I prefer that. I think. Well, here, this is an even better open-ended question with everything we have going on. And T-Coy, welcome to the program. Thanks for saying hello. Here's my question. Are we at the right balance of power, players versus teams? Is it swinging too much to the players? Is it still too much with the teams? Do we have a good balance right now? What do you think?
It's completely going towards the players. It is going to continue. The pendulum has not finished yet. And the more I read regarding um, the misconduct situations, and about how many players now are happy that feel like they can talk more openly, and that the power now is swinging toward. Some of it has to do with the money. Some of it has to do now with, I think, what's happened in the last couple of months because of the coaches. I'm telling you, Tom, we are not done yet in the NHL with players getting more and more power. And watch when the next CBA comes up. It's going to be fascinating because the players now, I think, have a different sense than the last time the CBA happened. I I think we are headed more and more towards the NBA way of life in the National Hockey League.
And in Bogosian's case, I mean, it was,
Mm.
in a way, he's kind of throwing a bit of a fit because he got scratched a couple of games. There's 8 defensemen on the Sabres
Mhm.
roster right now. Okay, I
Right.
get it.
Mhm.
But, and Kruger said, hey, we're trying to build a culture here. We're
Mhm.
trying to build something where everybody needs to buy in. And I think that's any team. Everybody needs to buy in. And then
Of
for
course.
Bogosian to say, well, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'll let it remain through my agent. But I think you've said everything you need to say.
Mhm.
And look, he's had a rough go. He's had a couple surgeries on his hips. He's been a healthy scratch here and there, and when you have a defenseman, that happens. But his play hasn't
Mhm.
been great. Um, it just it's a distraction you do not need. So I think, to say now, I hope we don't ever get to a LeBron James type setup where a guy can literally dictate coach, GM, supporting cast, that kind of thing. But I honestly don't think hockey is the kind of sport where you can individually drive a team the way a guy like LeBron can in basketball. So
Well,
maybe we won't
I
ever
don't know if
quite see that.
I don't know on that because of I think the culture is changing. I think what if we go back to what if Connor McDavid says, I don't like this coach, I don't like this player. Who are they going to listen to? Right? It all. I mean, it just depends on the personality of that player. But don't you think McDavid? Sidney Crosby has that power if he wants it now. I think it's changed. I don't think it used to be that way at all, but I think it's changing. I really do. I think the players are going to have more and more, especially the superstars who are going to get paid the big money, are going to have more and more say in who the coaches are and who their teammates are going to be.
I'm re-
I really do believe it's coming.
I'm interested to see if it gets that far. Also, because
Oh,
hockey, I mean, basketball has big personalities and big egos. Not that hockey doesn't, but you're supposed to be polite and under wraps in the world of hockey. So I wonder if does that culture go away? That's kind of charming in a way about the sport.
It's going. It's going. It's the kids today. It's going. It's different. It's just different. It just is, and that's what's coming. And it's especially, uh, after that entry level contract is done, after that first 3 years, these guys are the superstars come into the league at age 18, and they get their big money at 21, 22 years old, Tom, and they when they get that kind of money, they're going to have, depending on their personality, they're going to have that. It's different now. Would you agree with at least with this? Even in the last 5 years, one of the things that's changed. I remember I was 5 years. It was at least 5 years ago. Teams didn't want their players. I remember it here, Denver. They did not want their players on Twitter. They did not want them to say anything. Right? You remember those days? I'm telling you, they said, we don't want you saying a word. You don't say anything about the team. You don't say anything about yourself. And that's all changed now. Now they're all about their social media. And it's all about me on the social media. It's changed. It's just changed. And those guys who are promoting themselves and getting more and more lucrative advertising for themselves and making more money, they're going to want to dictate things around them. It's just the nature of what's happening in our world.
Yeah, I remember when I was with Nashville, Ryan Ellis did a little video, and it was funny. I laughed. I thought it was hilarious. He did a thing where he was like, I'm a human rocket ship. I'm scoring goals on the moon, and he's got like money, and he's throwing it out to reporters and stuff. And it was just a humorous little video. It didn't mean anything, and the reaction inside the organization, you would have thought he murdered 12 people.
Yes, exactly.
Heaven forbid the guy show some personality, but that was just frowned upon. And
I know. Remember when Evander Kane did that thing in Vegas with the money?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Ryan Ellis was just being funny. Evander Kane was being serious, but but that's the thing is, I feel like it's weird that for so long the sport didn't actually have a sense of humor about itself. I wonder, maybe that's catching up with them.
Yeah, but I just also think it's a power thing. That those guys now,
sure.
I'm telling you, we're not that far removed from when teams would not, at least the team I was with, would not allow their players to be on Twitter. But they can't tell them no now.
Well, they're building a brand now, Mike. This is all about building a personal brand.
And when we talk about brand, what is that, Tom? It's individual. It's them. It's them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be slow. I'm not saying this is happening overnight, but that's where it's headed. It just is. That's our society, and that's where it's going for sure. And I think we'll all, hockey will always have, because it's such a team sport, and there's so much tradition, and things are passed on, but more and more, it's also such a young league now. I tell you, when here in Denver, when the teams were winning cups, they had older players on the team that were teaching the younger players, here's how you behave.
Right.
Here's how you act on and off the ice. Now, your best players, Tom, are 18 to 25 years old. They're the ones that are deciding how the locker room's going to be. You don't have, it's very, very few 35 to 38-year-olds on the team teaching the young players how you behave and how you act and how things are done in hockey. Those guys are almost out of the game completely now, right?
All right, now you've got me on a separate soapbox. I was going to say, hey,
sorry, I don't know why we got on this.
Well,
path,
because you got me onto this topic in my mind. I'm thinking to myself, I was going to go to break, but since we're here, this is a byproduct of our salary cap world that we now live in,
Yes. Yes, it
because
is.
now your veterans were considered, and the NFL went through this about 10 years ago, and their veterans disappeared. And that's exactly what's happening to hockey right now, is the veterans are disappearing because they're considered too old and too expensive, with
Or they
emphasis
won't
on the
take
too
them.
expensive.
You have guys who, if you want to stay on a team as a 38-year-old, you better be ready to play for 600 or 700,000.
Right.
That number seems so insanely ridiculous to people who are probably
Sure.
listening and watching us. But everything's in perspective. But that's the low end in the NHL.
Patrick Marleau coming back to the Sharks for 700 grand and fitting it under the cap that way, that's an anomaly. That is not
Yes.
something that's going to happen. And those
Right.
players a lot of times would rather retire and try to figure something else out. So,
Right. And so you don't
but
have those guys now teaching these young superstar guys who are making $10 million how you're supposed to behave on and off the ice.
it's also why I think you should never name a captain who is under 25, really. I think if you don't have 5 to 7 years in the league, you probably shouldn't be wearing a letter. And this is no, well, I guess it is a slight to the some of the younger guys. I mean, they may be the leaders on that team in one form or another, but I just feel like a captain's not your superstar. A captain is your veteran voice of reason, in my mind. That's
agree.
what I would want on my team wearing the C. You want a younger guy to be a leader? Give him an A. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just think that an older player, an experienced guy should, and if you don't have that guy on your team, that's a problem, and you need to go get one.
But you know what though? This started with Sidney Crosby.
Well, no, it started with Trevor Linden with the Canucks. He was named the youngest captain in Canucks history. I think he was 18 years old when he got the captaincy in Vancouver.
Yeah, but he's been passed though in terms of youngest, because at first it was, then Crosby was the youngest, and then Landeskog was the youngest.
Right. And all the way around, I still don't agree with that.
I don't know what McDavid. I don't know what. I know. I'm just saying that that's what's happening. You get those are the guys. It's no longer the veteran, that wily veteran guy. It's now who's our superstar. We have to give him the C.
Right. And I just don't think that's what a captain is. So
I agree.
All right. Well, let's calm down for a moment. We'll take a breather. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We've got a couple minutes left here in the show. So
still a great game.
It is. It is a great game. We do. And you know what? That's why we get fired up. Is because we do love it.
Right.
You know,
we want it to be the best. We still want it to be the best. And I don't want to be one of those crabby older guys who I was so much better but you have to have some reality too. And it has changed.
Sure.
And this is what it is right now. And we can at least talk about it and discuss it. But that to me is what I see now. That's just where the league is going. So
all right. All right, so Mike and I are going to take a break here. We'll be right back with a little bit more Talking Puck. All right, welcome back, everybody. A little more Talking Puck here as Mike and I have had a chance to cool down a little bit, but we're still pretty fired up.
Yeah, these young whippersnappers were.
I know.
I don't want to sound like the old guy. I have children who are still playing, one in college, one in high school. So I have a sense of what young people who are involved in hockey are thinking. It's not just me having been in the pros for over 30 years, and going, oh, in the good old days. Believe me, I feel like I'm at least have some in touch with what young people are thinking. And it is, you made a great point. The great players, led by their agents, Tom, they want to have a brand of their own, and it's a slippery slope once you start going down there,
Well,
because hockey to me is such a great team sport. It's all about sacrificing for your team. And if you take that away, you take away something very special about this sport.
yeah, I agree. And it used to be that, guys who played hockey in the winter had summer jobs. And
Hmm.
then it got to be the guys could at least afford not to work in the summer and could take their
Right,
summer off.
right.
And now it's all about life after hockey. And
Hmm.
if you're a brand, and how do you expand that brand and extend that life as long as you can to continue to capitalize on it. And it's again, social
Yeah,
media is a part of that. Look at
yeah,
what we're doing. We're on a social media platform here.
absolutely.
We're on Twitch.
But the other thing is, for every Connor McDavid, there are hundreds of guys in the league that are just hoping to hang on. That just like I just want to play another year. I mean, we talk about those guys who are making a brand, but it's a little over 700 players in the league. There's only a handful of guys that are the Connor McDavids, the
Right.
Sidney Crosbys. A lot of the players are guys who are just hoping to stay in the league for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's the majority. And those kind of guys are great team guys. And those are the guys that are going to keep hockey such a wonderful sport. But what is missing is, and I love those guys. I love having conversations with them. The guys who were in their upper 30s and just knew the little tricks, on how to
Mm-hmm.
play, and also how to be mentors to the younger players. And I think it's a bigger loss for the sport not having those guys in the game anymore, for several reasons. How you play the game. And selfishly, I loved interviewing those guys. They were,
Sure.
they understood the media sense of it, a lot of them at least, and got it and could teach. And to me, that I don't know if you can get it back, but that's something that is I hope can get figured out, and get those older veterans back as part of this game. I think they're missing.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at some of the guys who eventually. And by the way, I do want to get to T Coy's question, so start
Oh,
thinking
sorry.
about your answer to this. But he wants to
Yeah.
know, will the Devils ever bounce back? So we'll get to that in a minute. But you look at some of the guys who, even in recent years, Michael, I think were our best, most entertaining guys who were out there, like Joe Thornton,
Mm-hmm.
Roberto
Mm-hmm.
Luongo, all these guys who played into their mid to late 30s and kind of
Mm-hmm.
realized once they hit their mid to late 30s, this really is a game. It is
Mm-hmm.
a game, and we have been fortunate to live our lives playing this game. And they
Right.
say things and they do things that younger players, in a lot of cases, I think, are even scared to entertain. And it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to have those voices there and those guys who will talk to you and open up about, having been around so long where you just have a confidence about you. You're still in the league at whatever age.
Yeah.
You know a thing or two. And I agree with you. I miss talking to those guys. I
Yeah.
loved it, especially the ones who would open up.
Yeah. No, they had a sense of security that they knew they could goof around a little bit and have some fun and enjoy what they're doing, and they knew they were going to have a job,
Right.
as opposed to the younger guys who were right on that precipice of, you know, am I in the majors? Am I in the minors? And I don't want to say anything that's going to rock the boat. I'm just going to give you the, the road answer, and just I'm going to make sure I stay out of trouble. Don't say anything. Don't do
Right.
anything. And I don't want to give them any reason for them to send me down to Johnstown with the Chiefs. So it's so you know I mean. But it's anyway. That's we could spend a whole hour on that. But I want to make sure, and let's talk about this subject. I'll let you go
We did
first.
because we talked about it at the beginning of the show, and I don't mind
Mm,
revisiting it. But the Devils, I think Taylor Hall has declared them in a rebuild all by himself. I think
yep.
Hall saying, "I want out. I'm not buying in." You end up with a coaching change. The
Right.
goaltenders have not played well, and it looks like, made the flip to Mackenzie Blackwood. And I can't see how they're going to get rid of Corey Schneider.
Oh boy.
I think they're stuck in this period, and right now, one of the questions of a pending Hall trade is, what does Ray Shero want back? Does he want usable pieces right now? Does he want futures? Does he want a mix? Honestly, I think for me, if I'm looking at the Devils, I want the future. I'm
Mm.
not worried about plugging guys in for the rest of this year because once
No.
Taylor Hall is gone, that's that.
Hmm.
So now you better be committed to a rebuild in New Jersey. So to me, a Devils bounce back is at least a few years away.
It is are they still on the lookout for a coach? I mean, is this what? Because I think right in Dallas, they're just at the moment, right? They've got an interim situation. Then
Yeah,
bonus took over there, and
yes.
so that's I don't think he's the long term solution there. What do you think the situation is in New Jersey? That might have something to do with you know if you're the GM, is this my guy? Is what if he's not? What kind of players? If I bring in a coach, what kind of style does he want? What I mean, there's some moving parts to this right
Sure.
now
Sure.
for
Well,
them.
and again, what I said earlier about Detroit too is if your guy's available right now, you try to
Yeah,
bring that guy
right.
in. But if you're going to wait till the end of the season, I think you might see a bunch of interims on teams that don't really have a chance to resurrect themselves. Obviously,
Mhm.
Dallas is in a playoff run. And
Right.
Rick Bowness is a veteran NHL coach. So as
Hmm.
long as
Hmm.
the Stars continue to play well, great. Now the Sharks picked it up all of a sudden, then went right back in the tank, lost 6 in a row, and now they've kind of pulled it back out a little bit.
Right.
That's a team that said, hey, we need to make a change because other
Right.
teams are starting to pick it up. So
Right.
I guess it comes down to who's available and is that your guy as to whether or not you want to secure long term in the future. But really, this summer is going to be one of reckoning for the Devils. I think they have a
Oh yeah.
lot of big decisions to make on and off the ice for this franchise. And Ray Shero is a good guy to do it. I think he can be the architect of a team that'll bounce back. It's going to take a while.
Mhm. Yes, and this is a big trade for him.
Sure.
You don't want to swing and miss on this one because you've got you have to trade him. So teams want to take advantage of that, but you know what? Now you're not making the playoffs, and so at this point, how much of a rush do you feel? It's that thing of are we going to get more for him if we trade him right now, or is there more going to come our way for teams if we get closer to the trade deadline?
I
I,
think
I
they were hoping to add more now by dangling him the earliest of the early. I think that's what
mhm.
maybe the strategy was.
Yeah, no, it seems to be, doesn't it? But if they're not able to get something done, there might be some teams that feel like what that feel like they can really it, that could be the piece that takes them to the Stanley Cup.
Sure.
So that it seemed like boy, you hold them out of a couple of games over the weekend, you think you're very close to a deal, don't you?
You would
That was all.
think.
That's the indication.
Yeah, you would think. And it's interesting
Yeah.
to me. I mean, is Taylor Hall becoming the guy that nobody can seem to make a good trade with?
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Right.
between Edmonton and Boston and New Jersey, and how much more pressure does that add to deliver a return that people deem sufficient? So
It's huge. They can't miss on this one. They got to make sure um, if they need to get probably a high pick. And the thing is, do because if you're trying to get do you think they can get a number one and a prospect back for him? Do you think you can get a number one for him?
I think they have to, or they've got to get a couple of top flight prospects.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I thought. And
I
who's willing? Boy, this day and age, it's hard. Those top picks are hard. They're hard to. Teams don't want to deal them anymore. They
no,
used to be those number ones that would be flung around all over the place. Now, teams hold on to them like it's like it's gold.
yeah,
So, you better believe that Hall is going to make a difference for you if you're going to give up a number one.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yep.
we've hit our 8 o'clock stopping time
Right.
here in our Mountain Time zone, and 10 o'clock in the East. And I know we had some technical issues tonight, and a couple of questions. And Decoy, we can get to the. We'll talk about the Bruins next week for sure.
Mhm.
We will get to that one as well. But Mike, thanks as always. Anything you want to leave us with here to look out for this week? Do you? First of all, let me just ask you this: yes or no? Taylor Hall dealt this week.
It has to be by
Thursday.
11:59 on Thursday.
Yes.
Um, Having him held out for those 2 games leads me to believe it'll happen. I just it seems like they must be very close. They must have felt they were real close. Otherwise, why would you take him out? Unless you just unless you're just done with him and just
Mhm.
think we'll just keep him out until we get him dealt. But that just led me to believe it should be done. How about you? What do you think?
For the same reasons I thought it might, but now the more I read on it, the more I think that teams are maybe not quite as prepared, and maybe they're having some of the second thoughts you mentioned earlier about, is this really going to be the guy? He's not having that
Yeah.
season, and what has he won? In the pro ranks anyway. So
Yeah.
maybe we do see it held off until after the Christmas holidays, I guess. Which I think that doesn't actually resume the deadline. Does that lift before the new year or after? I think it's before the new
Uh,
year, isn't it?
yeah, it's a
A little bit
few
after
days
Christmas.
after Christmas. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe by January 1st, but
Yeah,
I don't know if we'll see it before Christmas.
yeah. I think at this point the Devils aren't necessarily in a rush, but
No.
then you start thinking, okay, who then out of the bottom teams, and this is something we can talk about next week, and people who are watching and listening can think about who then after Taylor Hall, who are the teams in the bottom who go, okay, you know what, this guy's got to go, this guy's got to go, and
Right.
they're gonna be highly looked at by teams that are in the hunt for the cup. So that could be a topic we can talk about next few weeks.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we shall do that. And thanks to everybody who joined us this week and waited it out through the Gremlins. We appreciate you being here with us, Mike. Thank you as always for
All
being there
right.
on a Sunday night.
Talk to you next week, Tom. Looking forward to it. All right.
Sounds good. We always have a lot of fun, and we appreciate you being here as well. Thank you for watching Talking Puck. We'll talk to you